Welcome, everyone, to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the advertising manager, and I get to be your host today. I want to thank our sponsor today, the Montana Association of Weavers and Spinners. It's an incredible organization that has an amazing list of activities that they do. Check out their conference. Thank you so much, Montana. We appreciate you sponsoring this today. As always, if you'll put your questions in the Q&A and not the chat. We love the chat. Keep those comments coming, but I don't always get to see the question if it's there. So if you put it in the QA, I know I'll see it. Today, we have Michaela McIntosh. Michaela has been a traveler. She's traveled around as a Navy child. She's gone coast to coast in all the places that her family lived, and in 2 continents. And she currently weaves and spins here near me in South Carolina. She earned a BA in Education Elementary and an MA in Learning Disabilities. Although she's never received a formal education in weaving, Michaela is a self-taught thanks to numerous wonderful teachers and mentors via HGA and other institutions. Her first weaving class was a recreational workshop in 1970 in New Hampshire, where she learned to make a Cinture Fleche from a lovely Canadian woman. Although it was a simple finger woven belt, Michaela was hooked. Michaela describes herself as an ADDH, and I guess she could say this, an attention deficit disorder hand weaver. I think there's a lot of us that would agree with you on that, Michaela. As she has woven the gamut from mug rugs to hug rugs, and Michaela has shown her work in a variety of places: Charleston City Gallery, the Newberry Arts Center, Gateway Arts, and the Blue Ridge Arts Center, and the Folk Arts Center. We are so excited to have you here today, Michaela. Hey.
Hi, how are you?
I'm still thinking about that ADDH thing. That's good. Attention deficit hand weaver.
I hijacked it out of age activated ADD.
Age activated. All right. It's fiber activated.
Right.
So what is your favorite tea?
Well, I don't think I have a favorite, but I have one that I think is really interesting that I'm drinking right now. It's Yaupon tea, and anybody who's done any gardening in the Southeast knows about Yaupon hollies. They're native, and the Native Americans would use the leaves for tea. They actually have brain boost, immunity. This says with twigs. It's loose tea. My granddaughter gave it to me. There's a shop in Savannah that is devoted to Yaupon teas. This has elderberry. It tastes good. I like that. But
How do you spell that? Because I know people are going to ask. How do you spell that?
Yaupon. Yaupon. They sell Yaupon hollies in all the nurseries. You can get dwarf, tall, but they are a native tree.
Wow. That's a new one. I'll have to add that to the list. So when we were doing your bio, I said, I was reading how you've been traveling from coast to coast as a kid. And that one time you actually lived in New Zealand. So how do you think all of that moving and living in different geographical sites, how do you think that impacted you as a person and then your weaving or your arts in general?
Well, at the time, I wasn't involved in too much art, but I think all the moving that we did, because my mother, she had 5 children to move every time we moved.
Ouch.
And, when I think how young she was when she moved us to Paris, it put her in a totally different perspective. And she made it interesting. She wanted us to be interested in what was there. The world was an onion, and she was determined to find every layer of every experience we had was a positive thing. And I think I got that, and I got a little bit of itchy foot. You know, I like to move around a lot. That's why I square dance. But it showed so much of what there was out there. So,
Oh, that's a
and
wonderful way to grow up.
it has its drawbacks. It definitely has its drawbacks, but I was always way ahead of my classes in social studies because I'd been to the places they were reading about.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we're going to show an image now of your weaving, of your spinning. That you've spun, and I think you dyed these too, right?
I did.
Okay. How did you start out spinning? How did you learn to spin?
It's interesting because I had never seen anybody spinning until I went to New Zealand. And the young, one of the officers' wives was a spinner, and I have to tell this story.
Oh, please do. We love stories.
She had an advantage when they went out to visit a sheep farm during shearing season. And Grace asked if she could shear sheep. And New Zealand in the 60s, and it probably still is, was a little bit chauvinistic, I would say. And the sheep shearers were just thought that was going to be the funniest thing they ever saw. Well, what they didn't know was that Grace had also played the cello for the Cleveland Orchestra, and she knew how to hold that sheep and shear. And it was just like playing her cello. She really impressed them. But the other person who was spinning was the wife of the Mount Cook Airlines pilot, Sally Middleton. And she spun and knitted sweaters for the ski shop up at the hotel, the Hermitage Hotel at Mount Cook. And I thought, gee, that looks like fun. Never thought of it again until I wanted some sweaters. You know, I wanted to do something. And I saw this spinning wheel came up at an auction, and man, that was the beginning of all of it. And the little old lady that taught me how to spin gave me some wool and showed me what to do. And her husband had fixed the wheel that I had bought at the auction. Then I moved, and it just happened that I moved into a house in Oregon that was around the corner from Jerry Lucas, who was one of the first recipients of HGA's COE in spinning and weaving, back when it was one thing, spinning and weaving. And Jerry was a marvelous mentor. Besides being a beautiful soul, she was wonderful. And so I fell in with this group of spinners and weavers, and that was the beginning.
Got sucked into that pack.
Yeah.
Running wild. Well, speaking of mentors and fabulous weavers, the world recently lost a wonderful weaver and teacher in James Kler. Now, you took a class from him. What was some of your favorite memories of that class with him?
Well, first of all, that was my first convergence, that I was conscious that I was at a convergence and not wandered into a place in Portland where they had all these neat things. And I thought he was one of the kindest and most honest people I'd ever met. I had not ever taken a tapestry class, really, and he did not bat an eye. Here, this was really almost an intermediate class, and he was just as patient as he could be. his work, I had seen his work in New Mexico before the class, and immediately been just mesmerized by it. And when I saw the class available, I said, I have to take that class. And he was just an amazing person. I learned a lot. One of the main things I think I learned from James was, you have to show up or it doesn't get done. Because he had such a routine. He was such, he just worked so hard to do what he did.
Do you do that now? Do you make sure you weave, maybe not daily, but weekly, monthly, whatever?
I try to. I don't always get the weaving. There was a long time there where I wasn't weaving at all because I was waiting for a hip replacement. But now that I've got that, I have no excuses. So, and besides that, you can always weave on a table loom or something else when but if I'm not weaving, I try to do something fibery, like knitting or winding warps, anything, just so that I get my time in for the day.
Well, that's a good idea. Doesn't always have to be weaving, does it?
Yeah.
There's all those other steps involved.
Right.
Well, when it comes to weaving, how do you design? Are you one of those people that you get on a computer? Do you draw it out by hand? Do you get on the loom and wing it?
When I was first started weaving, I was so into texture and color, seduced by texture and color. And as I've learned more from fabulous teachers, Marcy Petrini for one, and I don't even want to start naming them because we'd be here forever. There's so many good people that I learned from, and I do some planning for structure now, because structure and the yarns have to kind of work with each other. And when I first started, I'd see the yarn and I'd want to weave it up, and I wouldn't do the planning as much because I never particularly liked the math part. But I've learned that math is your friend. Math is your friend.
Or at least you got to make friends with math.
But yeah, I do a combination of things. If it's a fiber that I've used a lot and I know what I'm going to do, I can do it pretty much off the top of my head, but I don't usually do that. I usually plan it out. In fact, I just bought myself a new set of colored pencils. I do use a computer too, yes.
I was going to say, do you use a computer at all?
I do. I'm taking watercolor and drawing so that I can do better cartoons for Tapestry and plan. And so I have the colored pencils to do if I want to play with a drawing, draft drawing.
I think you're one of the first people.
She told us that she started off using graph paper when she started figuring out network drafting.
Who is this? Alice?
Alice Schlein.
Alice Schlein.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well, since we're talking about color of use and pattern, this next image is one of your pieces that's M's and O's. It's a beautiful pattern. Look at that. So now that you've experimented, you've had all this experience, would you say you're more of a color person, more of a pattern person?
I am drawn to color, and I do tend to go toward the jewel tones and the blues. I love blues. Yellow is not my favorite, but there's a place for yellow. I never thought I would be weaving orange, but you can't live near Clemson and not weave with orange. uh, I am both. I like both, and I have expanded my colorway, the things I like. That's been expanded because I realized that with some structures you can make any color look pretty. So I like structure and I like to experiment. So I like structures that you can thread it up and do 4 or 5 different patterns, perhaps.
You also, since we're talking about color, I'm jumping around here. The scarf shows your beautiful use of color. We're going to show a scarf here in a second. And I'm always curious about when people have their relationship with color, I guess I should say, because some people are like color theorists. You know, this is the color and you've got to put it with this one and it matches that one. And then some people are kind of like, oh, well, I'm going to try this. I'll sample and I'll see what works. And then some people just kind of go by the, the seat of their pants and they just try things. Where are you in that continuum? I mean, do you feel like you've studied color and you know it, or is it more instinct?
I have studied it. I took a class with Chen Chu online during COVID. And before that, we had programs on it at the Guild in Charleston, the Palmetto Fiber Arts Guild. And I didn't realize until I started studying it a little bit how in-depth it was. And I bought some books on color, and yet when I'm working with it, like that scarf in particular, I very carefully laid those areas out because I didn't want them to bleed into each other and make a yuck color. So, and I wasn't sure how it would work out, but I was pretty sure it would be okay because I had limited my color palette to things I knew would work together. So I think that I take a lot of inspiration on color from nature.
Oh.
Nature is amazing. It's amazing. And when you look closely, she doesn't discriminate with color. But again, that's where the structure comes in. I just go with what I like. I just finished a scarf and I wasn't very happy with it, but I realized it's because those aren't my colors. I would never wear that scarf. And it happened to be the yarn. The yarn sucked me in. Thanks, Dawn.
Were you in Easley, South Carolina?
I am near Easley, South Carolina.
Is that where you went? Is that the Dawn you're referring to?
That's the Dawn I'm referring to.
That darn Dawn at Lofty Fiber. Darn her.
Yeah. We are so fortunate to have her close by.
You weave on a floor loom and you also weave on a tapestry loom, right?
I do have a tapestry loom.
Okay.
Yes.
So many fibers artists now are doing this. Everybody wants to try, the horizontal, vertical, they're trying different things. What draws you to each one of those?
Well, this sounds really lame. I bought the tapestry loom because I thought that maybe horizontal tapestry, or I mean vertical tapestry, would make my tapestries better. But I had, when I took the class from James, I had a little table loom that's 100 years old this year.
Wow.
And he was so kind. He came by and he said, Michaela, he knew that I was just a little frustrated, because he let me, when I showed him my design, he said, well, do you realize that you're going to have 13 butterflies? And oh yeah, I had no clue what he was talking about or what it was going to involve. And he just let me go ahead. And that was slow, but it was the loom that I have produced all the tapestries that I've sold on. And then he's mentioned that he uses a horizontal, and I thought, well, that would be a good thing to do. I have all this extra linen that I bought.
Mm.
And if you want to do something big, well, now over the years, I've shrunk. And the loom looks a lot bigger than it did when I bought it. So I bought some tapestry looms that would fit on a table, and maybe I could do it vertically.
So how did you buy the tapestry loom before you started doing tapestries, or afterwards?
After.
Okay.
I'd done several. I'd done some on a little Hocket loom. I'd done several on that table loom. I had not done any on this big loom. And I know James worked on a very large loom. And
Well, we might as well get to the question now, because somebody's going to ask, what is the loom behind you?
Oh, that is a J-Made. I bought that before I left Oregon in 2002. And I love this loom. It's koa wood from Hawaii. It had
Wow.
2 beams, and it has worm gears. So it's the smoothest of all my looms for advancing and winding on. I just love it.
And it's a J loom, right?
J-Made. They
J-Made.
stopped making them. He, I think his name was Johnston, and he made them in Oregon in the 70s. The woman that I bought this from bought it brand new in 1973 because she was taking a class with Jason Collingwood, or Peter Collingwood.
Wow.
And then later I had a class with Jason, thanks to a convergence, thanks to HGA, or fiber, no, it was Fiber Forum that we did.
We were in that class together.
That's right, we were. And I only got in that class. No, that was the Madeline Vandergroot class that I got into in Atlanta, because the person who had signed up for it was sick and couldn't go. And so I was on the waiting list. So she put me in that spot.
Well, I'm going to jump around here because we're talking about guilds. And I have to say, how people are like, how do you know Michaela? I said, Michaela came to my guild. And I remember I was so impressed, because I think sometimes we get tunnel vision. We do our guild, whatever our guild does, that's what we do. And I was so impressed with you that you had traveled to another city to take a workshop in our guild. And I thought that was so neat. So I want to ask you about your guild, because you were instrumental in getting your guild going, right?
Well, the guild that I got going with 3 other people in Charleston was because I contacted HGA and I said, do you know of any weavers in Charleston? I had taken a job at Middleton Place, out of historic property in Charleston, as their weaver, because I didn't want to be too much in my daughter's hair. You know, I was never lived in Charleston, didn't know a soul there when I moved there, except my daughter. And so I was trying to find other weavers, and there were a few around, but there wasn't a guild. And I had been in a spinning and weaving guild out in Oregon, and I thought, what? There's no guild? So the four of us sat down and we hijacked the constitution of the Western North Carolina Guild, of which I had already become a member. and we put an ad in the paper for people, and we got a very good turnout. In fact, that guild is 17 years old this year, and they are still going.
And that's the Palmetto?
That's the Palmetto Fiber Arts Guild, yeah.
Mhm.
And then up here, I'm in the Western North Carolina Guild, and a loosely collaborative group called the Warped Fiber Artists of the Foothills. But yeah, I think guilds are just a wonderful thing.
Mhm.
You get so much from each other. I wanted to move to Atlanta after coming down to your guild.
You can come back anytime you want, okay?
Right.
We got Mary Zickapus coming, so come on down, come to that workshop. Well, you were a teacher for years, right?
I was.
And I read an interview where you talked about using, even though you weren't an art teacher, you were a general ed, but
Yeah.
you incorporated art into your classes, did you not? At times?
Well, yes, and as part of depending on what school you're in, whether or not they have an art teacher who comes in. Well, our school
Sure.
did. The teachers were responsible for it, and you had we were doing integrated studies then. They were trying to integrate social studies and language arts and so forth and so on. And the thing about art for me was it gave kids who felt, it gave children a chance to be who they were, more so than they had, if they had trouble in math or in reading particularly, or even social issues, and they could draw or they could do an art project, it didn't matter if they didn't do it like other people.
Mm-hmm.
It was a struggle sometimes to get them to do their own thing. And I found that it helped the kids feel better about themselves. It calmed the class down sometimes when it's an interesting thing when a front would be coming in to the Oregon coast and the barometric pressure was switching. This actually happened. I had a lesson planned for an evaluation day, 3 days in a row, and the principal wasn't able to get there. Well, finally, by the time he was able to get there, we had moved on. And the kids were kind of tired of that subject and all. Luckily, I did have an art project ready because they were real squirmy. And after I realized this was tanking badly, I said, kids, let's just put those away. We're going to do art. And the class just calmed down. It was wonderful. And my principal told me later, he says, oh, that was a stroke of genius. I thought, no, it wasn't. It was just knowing your kids, and what they need. And I felt, I did get 1 year where I got to teach art to high school students. And there were 4 of them in that class. That was when I was teaching out in Eastern Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the 4 high school students. It was fabulous. $99 budget. I could do whatever I wanted. And we did art history, we did videos, we did drawing. They did not believe that what I showed them, this is where you started. At the end of the year, they didn't believe those were their drawings. I couldn't have been that bad. It's basically what they were saying. It was great.
Oh, they were blessed. That's so wonderful that you were there to show them that. That's great.
Well, that's what we do. Yep.
Yeah, I just see you continuing as a teacher because I don't know if you still do, but you were teaching art, weaving, right? At the guilds and that kind of thing.
I do on a kind of a slow basis. When people ask me, do I teach? And I say, sure, I'll be happy to teach you.
Mm.
And I'm not overwhelmed with, people are very busy. And Pat Brown, who teaches at the Pickin Center, and Pat is an awesome person, but they've got a whole weaving room there, and mine is a much smaller footprint as far as teaching weaving goes.
Now, where is the Pickin Center?
In Pickens, South Carolina,
Mm.
at the senior center, they have an amazing collection of fiber arts in the hallways. They have a knitting group. They have some art groups. It's just, but they have one room that's all looms.
Wow.
And they also have a collection of antique house tools. I mean, there was do you know what a chatelaine is? Chatelaine.
Mm-mm.
Well, back in the day when people had to go around castles and unlock big doors with great big keys, they kept their keys and all of their sewing stuff on these belts. And there's one there that's silver. I mean, it's amazing. It's a little museum in one corner of that senior
That's
center.
amazing.
Yes, it is. It really is.
That's a little treasure in South Carolina.
And they have some amazing hooked rugs on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. You talked about briefly, you mentioned gifts, and I was curious because we're getting ready to go into the big holiday season, right? And I always love conversations with fiber artists, well, any artists, but fiber artists about giving your work away as a gift. And I've heard people say, no, I don't do it. I value it. Other people say, yes, I love giving away my work. Where are you on that? What is your experience or feelings about giving away your work as a gift?
I think it's certainly fine to give away your work as a gift, as long as you're not giving it away because you didn't want to sell it, or you didn't think it was good enough to sell, or unless of course it's somebody close, like your daughter who accepts your towels that you your dish towels that were just a few inches short of being long enough to sell. I think that some people don't appreciate the work that goes into things. And if you're going to gift them, you should be prepared for that.
Mm.
I had an experience where I made something for someone and I spent quite a bit of money on the materials and all. And the response was, it's homemade. So I'd be very careful who you give your work to, but it's certainly, up to the person.
Yeah, it's that transition, I think, for many artists to when they go from, and I don't mean to step on anyone's toes, but when they go from hobbyist, or you make it just for your own enjoyment, into selling. I think that's a tough transition at that time of whether you give it, whether you sell it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that if you make something to sell and then you say, oh, I think I'll just give that to so-and-so, that's not it. I made some scarves recently, but the minute I saw the yarn, I said, oh, that's got to be for these people. And so, yeah, they were knitted scarves.
That's okay. Well, what's next for you?
Oh, well, let's see. I would like to concentrate more in one area of weaving. And I'm taking watercolor classes and drawing classes, and I want to use that to transfer. So I'd have to say, let's see, if I'm doing pictures and representational art, it would have to be tapestry. But I think that just getting through my stash would be a good start for the next.
Oh, wow. That's a tough one.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. There's a lot of yarn there.
Now, do you like using the same yarn that you use for a floor loom as you do for tapestry?
Actually, I have used some of the same. I use a lot of combinations, and I have learned that if you want a certain look to your tapestry, you're going to have to use more homogeneous yarn, because if you use yarns of different, too much difference, it's real obvious. And sometimes you want that. But yeah, right now I think you have to see, you wouldn't want to use a big fat yarn in a little tiny piece of tapestry.
True.
Do the math.
That's right. Well, let's take some questions. We've got some questions coming in from a variety of places. The first question, of course, is, did you make your scarf that you're wearing?
I did.
There you go. And people want to see more of it. There you go.
Okay, this is a shout out to one of the programs from HGA that I absolutely love, was the Learning Exchange. And I adapted this from a 12 shaft to 9 from a learning exchange I was in, and I can't remember who the weaver was that did the 12 shaft, but it was the first project I did on this loom that was on, well, it was on nine of the 12 shafts. So, yeah.
Well, people are asking about the tapestry that's on your wall.
I wish I could say that I had done that, but does that help?
Yeah, that's good.
That was an inspiration tapestry. I bought that in Cape Town, South Africa.
Oh, wow.
In Lesotho, which is a little kingdom surrounded by the Republic of South Africa, and the mountains, it's a mountainous area. And that particular co-op, the Sihati Weavers Co-op, was started, I believe, by a Finnish woman. And another co-op there, apparently it's a great place to grow mohair. And so the men take care of the sheep and goats, and the women do the tapestries, do the spinning and weaving. And I absolutely love that. I don't have any art that I don't love.
Well, is this your studio that you're in?
It's part of it. I have, that should be the dining room. But
dining rooms are highly overrated.
Right. I had to put the couch and what would have been the big weaving room where the big the yarn closet is. And so if the couch is in there, the TV is in there. Not that I watch TV because I've disconnected that, but that's why this is here. And there are 2 floor looms in the sunroom, and that's the room I spend the most time in because it's the lightest.
Mhm.
And then, you know, I've got 3 spinning wheels. One of them moves around to where I am, but usually is in the sunroom. And then there's one that's just storaged in the spare bedroom, and 2 that are here. So
Well, somebody was asking about spinning. They said they're curious if you weave or knit with the yarn that you spin. What do
I
you primarily use it for?
I have made a lot of gloves, scarves, shawls. The shawl that is on my business card that's over a chair was completely hand spun and hand dyed. And I took it to show to my aunt when they were coming down from Ohio to going through to Florida. And she insisted on buying it. And she said, "You've got to do this. You've just got to do this." So
Did you knit it or was it woven?
it was woven.
Oh, okay. All right.
It was woven. And I what else? I have woven I think I sent you a slide of a couple of stash busting scarves that have my hand spun in them too. The diamond pink and green, there were 2. Yeah. But yeah, why, you know, otherwise, you know, you run out of space if you don't use it. I do not sell my hand spun, and I do not sell my knitting. Those I do entirely for me and my
Okay.
family. I was gifted with 2 bags, or 3 bags actually, of fabulous Shetland wool, all carded and washed nicely.
Wow.
Left Oregon. And I packed dishes in it 3 times before I actually got a chance to spin it. So I spun it up in PA on my son's front porch one summer. So of course he had to get the sweater that I made with it. And he did last year. It only took me 20 years to get it done.
Well, do you spin enough that you could do a whole sweater, or do you have to combine your hand spun with purchased?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, what?
Oh yeah, I spin enough that I
Do
would
you
do.
really?
I spun all the wool for that.
Wow.
And I spun enough wool and dyed it. This was so fun to make a little sweater and hat for one of my grandchildren. And when I tied it kind of tight. And so I dyed it in indigo. And when I took off those ties, there were little white spots. And I thought, oh dear. Well, when I knit it up, it looked like little snowflakes.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah. So yeah.
Do you what kind of dyeing do you use? What do you use?
I have used natural dyes, but mostly it's MX or Procyon. I have some what's that other stuff? Starts with a C that I haven't used. It's for cellulose fibers, I think. I can't remember, but Procyon usually. James, going back to James Kohler, he said he started dyeing with natural dyes. And he realized one day as he was throwing out the water into the arroyo behind the abbey, where he was a monk at the time, that he was throwing heavy metals into the arroyo. Wow. Got washed downstream. And so he, not only did he switch to commercial dyes, but he also figured out a way mathematically, he exhausted every dye bath completely. Now, I don't know if that gets the heavy metals out of the water, but he stopped putting them into the arroyo.
Yeah, I think we've all learned a lot over the years of what we thought was fine, no big deal. Now it's not.
Oh, I know. What was it I was reading? Something I was reading when I was working at Middleton, about tincture of something. Well, anyway, it's the rust that happens on lead is white. And this was what they were using from lead.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Well, someone has asked, what do you spend most of your time doing? Are you more of a spinner, a weaver, a knitter, equal among the three?
I'd say I probably 2/3, 1/3 weaving, knitting, spinning.
Okay.
Spinning and knitting. I would do more knitting than I do spinning, and I do more weaving than I do knitting. So
Somebody was asking if you could travel anywhere with all the places that you've been, where would you go? Would you go to someplace new and where? Or would you go back to some place you've already been?
oh, whoever this is, that's a very hard question.
We're keeping you on your toes, keeping you on your toes.
Yes, I have never been to South America, and I have not been to Iceland.
Mm.
I have no desire to go to hot, humid places particularly. So it would have to be up in the Andes someplace if I went to South America. But I think I wouldn't mind going to Laos, Thailand to see that kind of weaving, even though that's hot and humid. I wouldn't choose necessarily to go back to another place, but I loved Scotland. I absolutely loved Scotland. And anything that was near Scotland that I hadn't been to, I'd go to again. Go to. It's just, there's too many places. How can I choose? I love
this. Is from Anne Marie Mullen. She says, hi from Tennessee. She goes, I love my Nashville Handweavers Guild. So much knowledge and enthusiasm. She said, I'd like to know what place you've been that was the most artistically inspiring. So we're staying on the travel theme here.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That is a tough one. Each area is so different. I think I would have to say that even though I was a child, we were in France for 2 years, and my parents made us, we went to a lot of Europe while we were there. Of course, it was still, this was in the 50s, and there were some places that were still destroyed, you know. But what we saw in France and Italy was at that time was probably, I realized that those were amazing works of art, even as 9-year-old, 10-year-old. I think Croatia, I went to Croatia, and I would like to go back to other parts of that area because the history it's amazing. And I loved India. I would say that probably if I had to say a most inspiring art, it would have to be Europe because it's more in this realm of what my culture growing up was. Yeah.
Somebody's asking what size yarn. I don't know what this means. What size yarn do you spin to weave with?
I have spun I guess you'd call it lace weight. I try to always have 2-ply, but I have spun single yarn that I've used for weaving.
Mm.
It was a Cotswold sheep that it came from. Clemmy lived at Middleton Place, and I got her owner gave me some of her shearing so that I could spin and weave her something. I wove her a wall hanging, and it was like weaving with mohair. Not my
Wow.
favorite.
Somebody else asked is, what's the best piece of weaving advice you ever got?
Don't give up.
That's good. And if you aren't weaving or doing other fiber things, what are you doing? I guess besides the watercolor class.
Square dancing.
Do you really square dance? That's wonderful.
I do square dancing. It's fabulous exercise, and keeps your mind engaged. You got to listen and move your feet at the same time and watch what everybody else is doing. So yeah, it's very stimulating. And I like to garden. I'm in a garden club, in a choir. I don't want to slow down, but I have had to slow down a little bit. Probably actually, maybe I speed it up and then I slowed down. I'm not sure. But the thing that I find most stimulating is just being with people that have done different things. And it's wonderful.
Somebody wants to know, have you ever spun from a silk cocoon? You ever spun silk?
I have spun. My sister gifted me with a bag of silk. I guess they call it silk waste. It's what's left after they've reeled off. It came from the mill where they spun the silk for Diana's dress, for her wedding dress.
Oh, wow.
And my sister was in England at the time, and it took me forever to spin that. I would not recommend that. It was very hard to get it nice. I have a shoebox top with combs in it, and it's waiting for me to reel the cocoons that I have up there off. And it was a loom that, was it John Marshall? I can't remember who showed us how to do that loom, but it was
All kinds of things.
I do.
That's good.
Yeah, I might spin that off those cocoons sometimes. I know where it was. No, that was later, but I did take a class from Celia Quinn years ago, and I think we worked with silk hankies. That's what we separated silk hankies. She was amazing.
That's wonderful. Well, it's hard to believe, but we're going to have to stop.
That went by fast.
It did go by fast.
Well, Kathy, I so appreciate what you've done with tea and textiles and what HGA does. And I want to thank the Montana Association of Weavers and Spinners for
well, we thank you, Michaela, for coming on today and sharing with us your weaver's life.
Yes. I hope I can keep weaving.
Well,
for
you're
a
such an
long time.
inspiration of, try new things, do new things, keep going, keep
Absolutely.
moving,
Do not quit. Just
do
keep
not quit.
moving. Yeah.
Well, we
So,
do want to thank our sponsors, Montana. Thank you so much for supporting this episode of Textiles and Tea. I encourage you all to check them out. They're a pretty amazing group of fiber artists. Thank you so much, Montana Association of Weavers and Spinners. If you would like to support and be a sponsor for an episode of Textiles and Tea, please go to the website and look up Textiles and Tea and can see where you can purchase a episode. It could be you as an individual, it could be your guild, it can be a business, whoever would like to support this organization and another episode of Textiles and Tea. We want to thank everybody for giving on Giving Tuesday last week. It was an amazing experience. And I want to thank people for being so kind when I called them. It was wonderful being able to talk to people. I see your names all the time, but to actually talk to people and say, how are you doing? And, to hear from them. I really enjoyed that part of it. So thank you all so much. But we do appreciate everyone who has donated, and we are working toward our end of the year goal. We raised quite a bit of money last week, but as you can see, we got to raise a lot more before the end of the year. And we appreciate your help, but we also want to remind you what wonderful things you're doing with your donation. Textiles and Tea, Careers in Textiles, Spinning and Weaving Week, all those programs happen through the donations that you all give to HGA. So if you like this programming, and we want to do more, we've always got new ideas we want to do, but you can always do so much with the staff that you have. At some point, you have to expand, and that's where these donations happen. It lets us go to that next step and try something new, add a new program, do more at Convergence. So thank you so much who have donated. If you haven't donated yet this year and you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your money, I hope you'll keep us in mind. We would appreciate your support. You can either go online, you can call, you can send a check, however you want to do this. We would really appreciate it. And also another way of supporting us is joining. If you're not a member and you're watching, we welcome you. Glad to have you here. But you might want to join and support that these programs can keep going. And you can do that also at weavespindie.org. If you've missed any episodes, you can watch those still. You can watch them on the HGA Facebook page, or you can go to the YouTube channel. And I encourage you to sign up on the YouTube channel, because when you do, every time a new episode is uploaded, they'll send you a message and let you know. If you've missed any episodes, grab a friend, tell somebody else about it. We would love to have more people seeing us. Thank you so much for your attention today. I hope you've had a wonderful week. I hope you have a great week, because next week, speaking about spinning, we have Paula Vester. We're excited to have her here. So thank you all so much. Have a great week and happy tea.